Hi guys, welcome back to Diamond Dave's Billiards. This is just a quick talking head video because it's past midnight where I live. In fact, it's 1 o'clock in the morning. So nothing wild on the table. But I was just having a bit of a think today. A bit of background. I live on an island in a country that is not my native country. And for the past, there's basically only one pool club on the island where I can play with any sort of serious players. And I don't play there very often. And in Korea, they've recently started to ease the restrictions, the COVID restrictions, social distancing, the number of people that can gather at a time, and etc. So in the last month or so, the one club that has a competitive scene has actually started to have some little tournaments again. And after being squirreled away in my home for 2.5 years, I thought I'd go and play in one today. And I just thought I'd give a little tip for people because of something I experienced playing at a different venue other than the table that I usually play on at home, with potentially different balls, different cloth, different conditions, etc. A lot of people, particularly to beginners, they discourage beginners to play with side spin or with English. The term in American pool being English, and in playing snooker we talk about using side. But I actually think it's really important that any player that takes pool slightly seriously, more than just a social hit with their friends every now and then, if any player that wants to get better at pool, I actually think it's really important that they experiment and play with using English and side spin. And I've just heard so many people discourage beginners from doing that because of the idea that they should be learning to hit center ball first and do center ball striking, and then move on to do plain ball with top, plain ball with bottom, then move on to learning how to use side spin and running English and check and outside English and all that kind of stuff. Because as we know, and if you don't know, you'll soon find out that once you start playing with side, all sorts of crazy things happen, like deflection and squirt and swerve and object ball throw, and all those things start to happen. And there are people out there like Dr. Dave, Dr. Dave's Billiards, as opposed to Diamond Dave's Billiards, who have made some really good videos and sort of worked on some systems that allow you to, based on your bridge length and using, I think he calls it backhand English or front hand English or something, depending on whether you basically line up straight or tilt your cue out to apply the side. Rambling. Anyway, there are people out there who have some systems and advice for how to play with side that make it a little bit easier. But really, playing with side comes down to experimentation, and it becomes like so much of pool. It comes down to playing it often and regularly, and for it to become muscle memory and for it to become a subconscious calculation. If you think about all the things we do on a pool table and all the variables that we have to account for every time we play a shot, even a simple stun shot requires us to judge the distance of the cue ball from the object ball, and how much bottom do we put on that, how much power do we put on it in order for the cue ball to be sliding by the time it hits the object ball. And for people who've been playing for a very long time, we do all these things subconsciously. We don't think about it. They're just automatic calculations. It's muscle memory, it's familiarity, it's from playing thousands and thousands of shots over and over again. And that applies to using side spin as well. And so today, to get back to, so my basic premise for this video is that I think even beginners should spend a bit of time just experimenting with using extreme amounts of side and just seeing what happens. I really think every time I do a practice session, I spend the last 5 or 10 minutes, even if it's just for releasing frustration. I spend the last 5 or 10 minutes playing shots with ridiculous amounts of side, inside and outside, and playing crazy check shots and swerve shots and just juicing the ball up as much as I possibly can. And I do it because it's fun. But it also continually reinforces that, you know, every shot you play, you absorb information about the shot. And so I really think beginners should not be afraid of using extreme amounts of spin when they play a shot, because all that information will be absorbed into their subconscious. It'll be absorbed into their pool playing mind, their little, you know, memory bank of information that allows them to, you know, that allows their subconscious to inform them of how a particular shot is to be played. And so the reason I wanted to sort of just make a little video about that is because, as I said, you know, I ramble quite a lot, but I played in a tournament today for, which I've done a couple of recently for the first time in a very long time, and that meant playing on tables I'm not familiar with. Now, normally when I play in a tournament, I basically just turn up, I get my couple of shots practiced, and then I play. But due to certain circumstances, today I happened to turn up about half an hour before the tournament began. So I got to spend about 10 or 15 minutes on a table by myself, just hitting shots around. And after I'd just played some, you know, dead long straight pots and ran a couple of racks of 9-ball, I started just juicing up shots with ridiculous amounts of side. And the first couple of shots I missed by an absolute mile. And you know, I think, well, wow, everyone misses, you know, everyone misses shots by a mile, but you know your own level and your potential and what you can do. And the cue ball was not doing what I was expecting it to do. And so I lined up some shots and I started playing them with huge amounts of inside spin and outside spin, and was just blown away by how much the cue ball was deflecting. And I was using my normal cue. So I don't know the reason why it was happening. I have a feeling the cue ball might have been light. Now, I don't actually know if a light cue ball would result in more deflection. It makes sense that it would, because it would be less resistance to the tip pushing through, and so the cue is more likely to push it offline as it goes through playing side spin. So, you know, I think a lighter cue ball would deflect more, but someone can correct me if I'm wrong. But I don't know why it was happening at this venue. If the cue balls were light, if they weren't the you know, premium Aramis cue balls, if they were the cheaper set. I don't know if it's because the cloth is thinner. I don't know if that would make a difference. I don't know if it was just the conditions. I don't know. For whatever reason though, when I played those shots with ridiculous side, it informed me of the fact that this table and these conditions were not behaving the way I expected to. And I didn't notice it until I played shots with ridiculous amounts of side. You know, when I was just doing a little practice before, I was playing a little bit of outside, a little bit of inside. Some pots weren't going cleanly, but it was nothing that sort of rang alarm bells for me. It was just, you know, I was just warming up. It wasn't until I played those shots with ridiculous amounts of English inside that I was like, this is not behaving the way my table behaves, or the conditions that I'm used to. And so my point is that without that sort of experimentation, without that knowledge of, or an expectation of how your cue ball should behave when you play these kind of shots, you can't make adjustments when something goes wrong. Now, because I have that knowledge of what to expect when playing that kind of shot, I was able to adjust. So, you know, I knew that when I was, because the fact is, as much as we want to play with center ball on every shot, I personally don't want to. I think a lot of high-level players don't want to. But, you know, as much as we think the ideal would be to play center ball on every shot with top or low, things don't always work out like that. And there are times when you have to play emergency shots. You know, you have to load something up with a lot of side spin in order to get position, in order to, you know, keep your run going, whether it be 9-ball or straight pool or 10-ball or 8-ball, you know, whatever it is. And when you have to do that, you want to be able to do it with confidence. You don't want to be second guessing yourself or wondering, you know, what is the cue ball going to do? How do I play this shot? You want to have some kind of confidence in your ability to do it, because it's those shots that make the difference. You know, it's those clutch shots. You know, if you're watching professional pool, you'll often hear commentators talking about a table revolving around one or two balls, and it might even just be revolving around one or two shots. And you want to have ultimate confidence in your ability when you play those shots. But you can't have that confidence unless you've got familiarity and data to work on. So because I played all these extreme shots, I was able to quickly figure out on this table, this is a bit different. So, you know, I'm going to have to adjust. So during the tournament, as the tournament went on, I knew that I was going to have to rely on plain ball as much as possible, particularly for pressure shots. And that if I did have to play something with extreme amounts of side, that I was going to have to account for a large amount of deflection. And when I was warming up, once I realized that the cue ball was deflecting way more than I expected, then I started to experiment with a couple of shots to see how much I had to account for. And usually, you know, when you play a lot of pool, you're very good at adjusting quickly for things like table pace, cushion bouncing, responsiveness of the cloth, etc. But deflection is a tricky beast, and it requires a little, some people can adjust very easily to it, but the difference that I was experiencing at this event was really off-putting. I wasn't adjusting for it naturally. I did, but only through a few shots of experimentation. So, for any beginner pool players out there, I would just say, don't be afraid to experiment with huge amounts of side. Juice the ball up, have fun. At the end of your practice session, after knocking in long balls for 30 minutes or whatever it is, throw a few balls on the table and just throw heaps of right-hand side and left-hand side and draw and drag and top and left. And, if you're allowed to, play some massays or some swerve shots, or just have fun and experiment, because every single time you do something, it adds data to your little Q Sports memory bank, and it allows you to subconsciously inform yourself of how to play particular shots. So yeah, little talking head video on some advice for people, just from something I experienced today and that I was thinking about, and I actually ended up doing really well in the tournament. My first match was brutal, actually. I was playing in Korea. They have a handicap system basically, and I was playing an extremely good player, and in 12 racks we had 7 break and runs, and he beat me. It was a double elimination. He beat me 7-5 in my first match at like 10 o'clock in the morning on a Sunday morning. It's horrible. He won the lag, and he broke and ran twice, and then he left me snookered in the third rack and won the third frame, so he was winning 3-0. Then he left me a chance in the fourth frame, and I cleared the table to go 3-1, and then I broke and ran twice in a row to go 3-all. Then I went up 4-3, then I broke and ran to go 5-3, and then he had 2 more break and runs. He got back to 5-4, had 2 more break and runs, and he ended up beating me 7-5. So my first match was a really good match. It was fantastic. But it was double elimination. So I went into the loser's draw after the first round, and then had a brutal day of just playing non-stop for like 6 hours. And then I ended up losing in the semi-finals. But it was, after I haven't played competitive pool for a long time. Sorry, I didn't lose in the semi-finals. I lost in the finals. Lost in the finals. But was, pretty happy with how I played, because after 2 years of no competition, my competitive animal has been tamed somewhat. So it's been quite hard to adjust to playing competitively again. So it was good fun. But that little story just made me think, you know what, people shouldn't be afraid of experimenting and just having fun for 5 or 10 minutes, because even if it looks like you're just bashing balls around, everything you do creates a little data point for you to draw on, whether consciously or subconsciously, and might just give you that edge when you need it most. Despite the fact that we don't want to play shots with huge amounts of side, sometimes we have to. So, the more experience you have with playing different kinds of shots, the more chance you have of being able to draw on that knowledge when it counts, and, might make the difference between winning and losing a match. So, yeah, have fun, guys. Experiment. Try out different stuff. Add to your knowledge, your Q Sports database up here. And one day it might just help you out. All right, guys, nice talking to you. And by the way, I just hit 200 subscribers, so watch out, PewDiePie, here I come. But whether you watch my video because I put my queue in sex toys, or get angry and throw my queue out the window, or whether you watch my videos because you enjoy some of the more serious stuff I do, you know, I appreciate anyone who hit the subscribe button. So thanks for watching, guys, and I will see you next time. Ciao.